Ah, yes. Tipping fatigue, tip creep, destroy tipping altogether. Today, I'm going to be covering probably the most controversial aspect of the hospitality industry. This comes to you as a section from my manuscript called How to Be Your Server's Favorite. A little something I'm going to chop up and move around and move over to video content instead of trying to finish the book because I frankly don't want to. It's going to be a series of shorts and long form content. This may kind of come off as being a little bit more customer oriented than just restaurant consulting oriented, but I really think it's important for both. And yeah, so, you know, get your hazmat suit ready. Here we go. Let's outline some of the big portions of this argument, and I'm gonna try to be as fair as possible. I want to offer you the most clear, reasonable conversation, no obfuscation as a pundit. Period. I want you to challenge me on it. I'm going to tell you which parts are my opinion and which parts are cold hard business fact. Um, I'm not. I'm not. I really not. I'm not here to rage bait. I'm here to inform about what it looks like from the inside and editorialize on some common positions that I hear. So to get things kicked right off, right. Here's my policy personally for starters. I tip 20% almost universally. It's not just because of my background, right? It's actually because it's hard to get more from me than that. Like, you have to be really good at your profession to impress me, right? I want everyone to have a fair playing field. I want new servers to feel like they can make mistakes and still be treated well, and people who are really good at their craft, like, I'm willing to give you the 20% up front, but I've been around the block, so you really really have to be good. Yeah, and I just do that to be fair, and obviously this doesn't apply to discounts or industry perks or friends and things like that, but that's just kind of the way that I am when I go out, right? And we're going to jump right into the most popular topic, to refer to it in the most toxic way possible, tip creep, or the story of why they're asking for 30% on a cup of coffee. And I'm going to give you my honest opinion here, right? There's going to be the little opinion flags. There's two specific sets of people to blame for this situation. The first one is the point of sale companies. Toast, Square, NCR with your new branding and everything. Look, I love you guys dearly. We have a long history together, but because we have a long history together, I've got to say what I really think is going on here. And this is almost kind of, if you're listening to this, like a little conspiracy sounding, whistleblowery kind of thing. But let me explain it to you this way, right? These guys are all-in-one payment processors and point of sale systems. So they do all of the user interface stuff. They track ticket times. They do all this great stuff. And part of the thing that these services offer is handling payment processing, which is really important in this day and age. It's not like the old days of the carbon copy, swipe things for credit cards and stuff. We obviously we don't do that anymore. It's all instant. It all gets reflected across financial institutions as quickly as possible, and these guys are experts at it. But they're making 2 to 3% per transaction, and that's with some nuances. Sometimes it's 2% with a flat fee and whatever, but we can call it namely 2 to 3% on processing fees for the whole transaction. And so that's why when you're tipping 30%, right, they're taking a slice of that money as a middleman. And I personally think that's why it's everywhere now. As these platforms have proliferated, every single retail outlet, any kind of person running their own business or anything like that, is now using these tools and these handhelds and this software to make sales in whatever form, be it at farmers markets or online and all this other stuff. And that's why it's everywhere now. It's literally also why the numbers are going up, because the middlemen are happy to handle all of the money and as much of it as they can, and take their fee, and they're everywhere now, which is why you've seen more places asking for a tip before than ever. And this goes right into, right, like, it's jammed into every single checkout for every single retail or service option out there. This leads right to our second group of people that I blame for this, are the owners. They're entirely culpable in this, and not just in the way that you're like, pay your employees. I know we're gonna get there, but they're culpable for this too, Because what owner doesn't see this and change the settings, honestly, right? Like, some restaurant owners are a little, high on their own supply, and they're like, well, we offer a great experience and we train our employees. Why don't they deserve 30%? And those guys are weird. I'm not saying no one deserves 30%. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't tip less than that if you feel like you're not getting appropriate service, right? But I just can't imagine being an owner and hearing the general consumer conversation about this, and then also looking at my own establishment and saying like, I'm going to keep 20, 25, and 30% on my tip screen. These guys either aren't paying attention or they're crazy, right? Which I don't think either of those is a great I don't think either of those is a great thing. So here's my other thing with this is 30% is fine if somebody wants to give that, or 15 or whatever, right? But that's for the customer to decide. It's discretionary. It's not for you to suggest. That goes in the face of hospitality, in my opinion. So, they're either oblivious or complicit to the problem, and like we said, neither is a good answer, right? Let's drop the crazy accusation. Now, the interesting thing about this that really compels me to think that a lot of owners are oblivious or a little, weird about their personal standards and how they expect customers to interact with them is that, like, federal law in some states allow restaurants to charge processing fees to their servers for processing their tips, right? So that 3% can come out of the service check. So, be it you tip them 20% or 10% or 5%, they can in certain states and places and whatever. Some interesting links will be popping around here. But some states actually explicitly forbid businesses from taking the processing fees out of the server's tips. It's actually like written in California law. Let's see if we put that up over here. How do you like the new angle, by the way? The business is required to pay the amount written on the receipt. Cool, great, awesome. But it makes me like really wonder if you have an oblivious business owner who's not allowed to pass these transaction costs on to the staff, which is never a good sign anyway, why they're encouraging 30 or 35%, because they're still paying transaction fees on all of this stuff out of their total revenue. So like I said, the owners are super complicit in this in terms of not only using the labor system as it exists to pay whatever the legal minimum wage is and whatever. But yeah, it's just nuts to see people openly paying huge fees on these percentages to the benefit of only the middlemen, right? And so, like we said, it's I never attribute to malice what can adequately be explained by stupidity, right? Handhelds and point of sale processing brings up a sensitive topic about like card only, no cash and everything, and I'm not going to touch that right now. We're already going to have enough inflammatory subjects to talking about tipping as it is. We're going to avoid the whole cash thing. At the end of the day, right, this cuts both ways. People who accept only card need to pay fees on everything. They might need to make some exceptions from time to time. I believe that restaurants should be extending hospitality, like for people who only have cash on hand or something, whatever. And I also think that there should be regulation about charging servers or customers these transaction fees if you only accept one form of payment. I don't know. I'm just going to throw that in there. I think that should be considered as well because, like I said, only some states protect servers and other states don't. And some states say, okay, well, you can, but you have to have written consent. And what does that look like if you're the only server who doesn't give written consent? Like, do you really think you're either A, going to be around that long, or B, up for any promotions or, whatever? That'll also come up later, right? And this is going to be a little side note. I'm going off script here just momentarily. It might frustrate you to hear because you say, well, in my home state of like Montana or in Chicago, even, for example, we have the One Fair Wage Act passed, and it's raising tipped employees to have the same flat minimum wage per hour as everybody else, right? And so that is probably going to affect tipping culture in some way, or what have you about these circumstances. But these things vary so drastically from area to area, right? Like the federal minimum wage is $2.13, and something like 14 or 18 states have the federal minimum wage or like damn near close to it. So in one place somebody's making $2.13 an hour because they're a tipped employee, unless they don't make enough to meet minimum wage or poverty line, in which case they're bumped up to 750, but restaurants go out of their way to avoid that from happening, right? And then you have other places like DC and Chicago or LA where people are paid $16 to $20 an hour, which is fine, right? But I'm saying that these discrepancies are huge and vary based on like your state and the cost of living and the workers' rights in that state. So keep that in mind also. And I'm going to circle back to these POS guys too. Man, this handheld thing kills me. Maybe I'm old school and I want to reduce the paper waste and everything and make restaurants like better for the environment because there's so much waste and I think people should take it seriously. But I really think that written notes are the best way to take orders. I'm actually going to be making a couple of shorts about this. But like theoretically, these handhelds should be reducing errors. It should be reducing food waste, but they're never configured to use quickly. Like if you ever are talking to a server and ordering a drink and you watch them, like, it looks like they're texting even and they're not making eye contact with you. And then they're like, yeah, okay, hold on. Sorry. Yeah. Pardon me for 1 second. Yeah. Because they're doing this on this damn screen that's not designed to be quick. And I've written letters about this too, right? Like you would think someone would listen to me, but they're never quick, right? So doing this whole tableside ordering thing is terrible. And back in my day too, oh, my back, but back in my day, people complained about like, oh, well, in Canada and Europe, I don't have to give my card to a server and, they could take pictures of it or they could make a copy of my card or they could, whatever. And now that we have tableside payments, everyone's pissed because they're like, well, now I have to tip in front of the employee. And I 100% agree with you on this. If I ran a restaurant today, every single receipt would print after you swiped your card and then it would go into a book with a pen for you to put your tip on the receipt paper the old-fashioned way with some damn privacy. I'm 100% with you. You think it's awkward for you? Like, I mean, it's uncomfortable for us too, right? Like, you think it's weird during a normal or even a good dining out situation where they flip the little thing back to you and they're kind of trying to not make eye contact, but we got a little thing going on. And then you're like, this is an expensive meal, 15%. And then think about what it's like for servers on the daily to have terrible interactions with this like alpha business bro douche who stares you in the eyes as he goes, no tip, the cores wasn't cold enough, right? I mean, that happens, right? These are things that happen to people on the daily. And like, so I agree, it's uncomfortable for everyone, right? I think we're all on the same page here. People need to stop doing this. Let's all insist on that, right? Because it can just be so simple. It was so simple for years. Why are we jamming things in with technology? Just give me the paper and let me sign the paper and we'll be all good. I already tapped. Let's just do it the old way. And so, talking about getting rid of things, right? Here's the other argument. Just get rid of it. It's just, hands down, this section is going to be the longest and probably the most controversial. I think everybody can nod in agreement, like, yeah, screw the POS companies, man, and to hell with lazy or crazy owners, and we're all on the same side on that. But now, we're going to get through the tough one, right? Oh, just give everyone a livable wage. Well, that job shouldn't make as much as this job or my job or blah, 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 blah. And, well, Europe does just fine without tipping and everything, right? So I'm going to kind of roll from my own personal experience here for a minute. I wouldn't have worked as long as I did as a waiter and gained the experience that I did without the pay incentive and the earning potential. If you're in a busy restaurant, you can make a lot of money, right? It's just all there is to it. And the thing is that a busy restaurant is the requirement, and that's a group effort, right? Like, it's also kind of hard to get into restaurants with high standards that have high volume and do these things. And Europe and even South America, which I have the great pleasure of spending a lot of time in, it may be charming and slow service and everything when you're on vacation and you think, oh, we have such a wonderful time. It's a slower pace of life. And well, wouldn't it be grand if things were like this in the States? No, I'm telling you right now, your high stress, high demand life in the US is not going to be made easier by adopting European service. Watching people just completely lack a sense of urgency when you're trying to like get in, have a meal, and get out is probably one of the circles of hell not mentioned in Dante's Inferno. And you will just get a worse standard of service if the earning potential is lower, period. I don't really know who thinks that there's going to be, like, it's already hard enough to find dedicated professionals in the service industry who want to foster this and take empathy and hospitality seriously, right? So what makes you think it's going to be any better if the pay is lower? And not to sound like a capitalist idealist here, right? Because I'm certainly not, but tipping is like the perfect system for customers, right? If all the jobs paid, say like $20 an hour, all the food would be priced to pay for that menu spread. And let's ignore the complications of like changing staffing levels, how that's going to impact attention and speed and the way restaurants are staffed and your experience and everything else. So let's ignore that. So right in this situation, the food is priced to pay for all of this, and you still get bad service. Well, now you can't do anything about it besides complain about it, which you already do anyway, and people complain about tipping all the time anyway, right? So in this moment, in our reality, the food is priced to only make the restaurant money, and you decide how much you're going to give the server. You can still undertip for great service. When you get bad service, there's zero requirement to pay for it, any of that. So like imagine what it's like when the shoe's on the other foot and you're paying somebody's $25 an hour wage to sit there and be on their phone and ignore your dirty plates and not refill your drink. If they even still have free refills at that point, which I'm going to guess that there's not, but that's one of those complications we said we were going to parse over. And so I want to mention this too, right? Because when we say something like standard of service, you know, you expect a standard of service for what you're paying or, you know, this or that. This is a platonic concept, right? It's like when you need extra napkins, you want the lemon in your water, you want refills on time. This all currently occurs, even in the shittiest of diners in the US, at a very high expectation because it's performance-based reward. So anywhere you go, typically anyone who's half decent or has half of a brain will try to do the best job that they can because they only get paid for succeeding, for you feeling comfortable, for you feeling like you want to give them a tip, right? So when you completely invert that expectation, you know, like you see kind of what happens sort of in other places. You order your beer and you get it 15 minutes later and in a sweaty glass and with no head, right? That doesn't happen very often in the US unless the place is understaffed, really busy, or you have a bad server. But even then, you might have a mediocre server who still goes out of their way to perform for you. And in the US, right, servers here actively lobby on your behalf for circumstances that you're unhappy with. It might even be the way a menu item is. But knowing that you're unhappy because of the way everything is structured, restaurants put the server's financial success and the customer experience directly into their job responsibilities and in their lap. So there's a lot of, I think, extra perks that come with this. I mean, if you don't want to have to wave someone down for everything you need or anytime you need attention, you probably want to keep tipping. And, you know, frankly, what you'll probably say is, oh, well, you know, in this theoretical universe, like if the service is bad, I just won't go there. I don't think that you're going to have many options in this hypothetical reality. I'm just going to give you a heads up. You know, wholly high minimum wages with no tipping involved and no tipping incentive means that staffing models are going to change, service expectations are going to shift. I think you're going to have a hard time. And I think in addition to that too, I think we should talk about how many restaurants this is going to kill in this hypothetical scenario, to say like just drop tipping completely, make them pay livable wages, whatever that's going to be deemed one way or the other. You know, and people, I hear this all the time. They say, well, if the restaurant can't make money, it shouldn't be open. Right. Like, you know, the airline industry, like the auto industry, like the banking industry. If you can't afford to pay your bills, you don't deserve to be open, right? Rambling, right? And, you know, let's talk about some cold hard facts here, right? Toast, love these guys. I meant it when I said it earlier. I'm giving you a hard time because I think we need to have an adult relationship, right? But Toast has some amazing resources available. Let's put them up, right? So, like, the average restaurant is making like 1 million to 1.3 million in the United States. Now, granted, that's an average for restaurants that are 12 months or younger. But when you think about like how big the pool is and then how many restaurants tank by 2 years and then, you know, actual percentage, regular, real growth instead of a restaurant that just magically becomes twice as busy in a year, which almost never happens, right? You can say that the average restaurant is probably making somewhere in the range of like 1 to 1.5, you know, kind of removing all the outliers. And Toast says that there's an average profit margin of 3 to 5%. Now, there are plenty of exceptions to this. There are outside of franchises, even too, right? There are like individual niche concepts. But in general, your mom and pops and your like small operators, your solopreneurs, they're not making tons of money. It takes them a decade before they can like open up a second location, or a lot of times it's just money straight into the account and straight out of the account for years, and the owners don't ever really actually draw paychecks. um, you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, I think that there's this big misconception of like, especially online, like, oh, it means the owner doesn't get his boat this year, or he doesn't get the new boat or something. And it's like, there are places where the people live in the restaurant basically because of how much they work there, and they're owners, right? They're owners. They live in the restaurant, they eat the restaurant's food, and they don't go on vacation because they, one, can't afford to, and two, they can't leave the restaurant because they're workaholics, right? I mean, this is totally a reality also. And I just don't want this painted as some kind of like fairy tale land conversation, right? I mean, I want everyone to be paid well, but restaurants are going to die, and the barrier to entry is going to be way higher if people can't afford to support staffing. And whatever, if a little bit of customer subsidy comes in to support that and make restaurants approachable for solopreneurs to open, I think it keeps the community vibrant. It might be a little saturated, but I don't know. It's once again just my 2 cents. But yeah, something like a revenue of $1.5 million doesn't go as far as you think it's going to go, right? Like, I mean, that's before taxes, that's before cost of goods, that's before rent, that's before all this other stuff. So even with a staff of like 10 people, it runs out pretty quickly, right? And like you said, I want people to be a part of their community. I want them to pay everyone well, but the hard fact is that it's not always an option in some ways, and having customer subsidies enables workers to earn while the business is growing, right? Now that I've been critical of both the capitalist ideal and kind of even talking about the workers rights ideal and stuff too, I want to reach all the way over to the other side, and like all my like left wing like labor rights people, I mean, with me, right? Like, I've got a small wrench to throw into your machine, because you're like, yeah, power to the people, like $25 an hour, across the board and everything. Overall wage stagnation and everything is one thing. But when we talk about the food industry in particular with tipping, this industry is inundated with abuse and other areas of worker reform that I think are more useful to address first. And it's part of what makes the job market so interesting and free, where you can kind of like bounce from one restaurant to another, or you can just go on vacation for 3 months out of the year as a server. I'm sure you've heard tales of this, right? Like servers like, oh, every winter I go to Venezuela or whatever, and whatever, like I just sit in an Airbnb in Venezuela during the winter in Indiana, and then I come back because I make so much money I can take 3 months off. There's this toxic codependency between the industry and the servers, right? For a lot of reasons, right? Uh, and I want to hit everyone with this, right? Well-paying server jobs are annoying AF to apply to, right? I mean, it's already bad enough with like Michelin jobs and like all this other stuff where you have this high-end thing where they want headshots and they want manicures every week, and your beard needs to be trimmed every 5 days, and you should go to this barber because then we know, and it's the kind of cut we want. And women and female identifying people, right? Like, oh, you need to wear makeup every day, you need to look presentable. The point I'm really getting to is that diversity in the labor force of the service industry right now occurs mostly because it's cheap, right? The turnover rates are already accepted, which are high. And the wages let people put on like 3 servers to fight on the floor for, money on a slow day. This tolerance for diversity and this tolerance and kind of like Wild West fight for your own food thing will go to zero if the wage is very high. The very first people likely to be hit by this are the same communities that are affected by tipping, right? Because it biases towards conventionally attractive people, people of conventional gender or sexual identity, of race and racial perceptions and everything, right? I mean, I agree that all these things are true. I just don't see how the high imposed universal wage with no tipping is actually going to help any of these communities. because they're going to be the first ones laid off. They're going to be the last to be hired. And you can talk about like, oh, litigation, improving discrimination and everything. But the reality is that all that is really slow. And nobody's earning a check during that point in time. As where, you know, if you can just go get a serving job, like, yeah, I mean, there might be plenty of things that suck about it, but you can at least put money in your pocket and pay your phone bill and buy food and get food from the restaurant. So it's just an idea, right? I really think that these vulnerable communities will be the first ones axed. I still think that all of the same biases are going to apply. It's just going to be hidden the same way that it is in other circles and other ways, right? And talking about circles, right, one of the things that I think really drives this argument on both sides, I think that this is one question that everyone sees from two very different angles on the extremes of like, everyone earns the money that and they deserve more, right? And the other side, it says like, oh, well, you know, maybe the job earns too much and this and that, right? This question is, how hard can it be to wait on tables? And I say it all the time, right? It ain't mine and coal, right? But it's not day trading either. It really reflects the perfect principles of game design. It's easy to learn, hard to master, or otherwise known as a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling. Just about anyone can go out and go be a server, or, you know, even in some instances, bartenders or this or that or whatever, right? But the problem is that it's very, very hard to do it spectacularly, right? And it is difficult, right? And let's not get into the technicals here or the psychology or like what it looks like, but I'm sure you can think of, I hope you can think of a time where like you went, I don't know, even to a Denny's. Let's talk about, it's my opinion. Let's talk about a dying franchise, right? You went to a Denny's. You expected it to suck. You had a great waiter. They just did anything and everything. They were fun to talk to. They didn't hover. They didn't talk too long. Everything came out on time. It was right. One thing came out of the kitchen messed up, and the guy was like, "Hey, you know what? I didn't even bring it because it's fucked up, and I'm getting it fixed right now." You're like, "Hey, this was awesome." And even this experience in this like greasy spoon side of the road, I've got 6 hours on my trip ahead of me, was pleasant. I hope that people have something like that everywhere, right? Like, uh, they they exist and they can be found all over the place, and I think that's special and interesting when you have people that are empathetic, that care about the job, and deliver this kind of an experience. You know, the flip side of that is I always like to ask my office job friends what it would feel like if their paycheck was based solely on their ability to make small talk. I mean, I love this job. I've served people from all over the world. I've been tipped in celebrity autographs, drugs, money from all over the world. I see people's faces light up when I make some small talk in whatever language that they speak from wherever they're visiting Chicago from. I have the privilege of knowing a little bit of sign language and watching people be excited that like I can wait on a deaf table with a little bit of propriety and communicate with them and have fun as opposed to being an obstacle or something like that. I mean, it means a lot to people to have these interactions. I mean, one of my favorite stories of all time, there was a family, you know, in Chicago from the Middle East, and they realized what time it was because they had had a lot of fun in Chicago and wanted to pray. And I was able to provide them a quiet space to pray, and I knew which direction Mecca was. That meant so much to them, and that's something that I was able to do because I want to be involved with people. I love having those day-to-day interactions. I love being involved in the cultures of all of the people in the world that come to my home market of Chicago to enjoy the city that I also enjoy so much. So 85% of my interactions over 14 years have been absolutely fantastic, and it's why I'm so passionate about this business. The other 15%, though, they're certainly fun. I mean, I've seen a man actively pooping himself completely in the nude in my bathroom. I've been assaulted. I've had people scream in my face. You know, people have stiffed me for no reason. It happens. You know, I've worked in a 100-degree restaurant in August because the AC was broken or not able to keep up with the atmospheric conditions. I've waded through buildings full of drunk people on St. Patrick's Day like it is The Walking Dead. I mean, to capacity. Just, I mean, you can't even shoulder your way past people. And worked for 12 plus hours and been asked by bad managers to underreport what I worked so that way I don't approach overtime. You know, and this job ain't for everyone, even if they are paying $20 to $25 an hour. And, you know, I openly admit, right? It's the same thing. It's not mining coal. It's not being a paramedic. Those jobs all have like shitty days and everything too, and horrific consequences. They also should be paid more, but I'm saying that even the service industry job, like, I don't know, you couldn't pay me enough to go mine coal, right? I'm sorry. It's just a very hard job and it has a lot of risks, and I don't want to do it. So, just a thought. And I want to go out of my way, right? I'm not trying to play the victim card. I'm not trying to apply anything. I'm a straight white 32-year-old dude, and I have thick skin. I haven't been traumatized by any of these experiences. The only trauma I've had from this is the hangover after retelling the story to all of my service industry friends on the decompression night out after a shift, right? I mean, this all just comes with the job. And professionalism is something, as I probably just even highlighted, professionalism is lacking. And in referring to my office friends, it's like things that would get you bounced out of an office job immediately for a hostile work environment or abuse or harassment are basically run-of-the-mill quirks for managers, line cooks, chefs. I mean, all that kind of stuff. These problems need fixing, but once again, I don't see how the wage argument or tips or anything really addresses this. I think it actually makes it quite a bit worse. I bring all this up because, like I said, I'm not really trying to change anyone's mind here. I don't think. I'm obviously opinionated, but I want you to know what you're getting into when you want some of these changes, because the practice may annoy you, but there's very little going back if any of these things actually change. And consumers are certainly annoyed with this, as highlighted by the Harvard Business Review article. I mean, a lot of people are getting more and more annoyed with this, and I think it's going to hit a detente before any real change occurs, because let's be honest. And fundamentally, I also don't care what happens. If customers overwhelmingly want change and work to affect it, I'm totally game for any of it. The business will adapt. The question is whether or not the customers will. It's like I said, I have my opinions from calling around in the machine, and I don't want it dismissed outright for like, well, Europe does it. Like, yeah, they also have smaller economies, functional public transit, gun legislation, and healthcare. Changing the system across all 50 states and 5 populated territories isn't like the same effect and the same impact on every market, on every server. It's not gonna work equally, right? Work reforms are doing in the U.S. And these opinions and nuances that I'm espousing are from an industry expert here, right? There's other things that I would like to see, like shift equity, paid vacation, not letting people get fired at will. I think would have a way bigger impact. That's my thing. And these changes have to be made slowly too, because they're going to bankrupt businesses if you do it quickly. And same thing, if they can't make money, they shouldn't make money. Fine, but I don't think you want an unemployment spike. I don't think you want all these businesses going out. It's going to limit your dine out options. It's going to do a lot of things. And I think you should have a little bit more foresight than that. And I think you do, right? I'm not saying you want to burn all this stuff to the ground. Just kind of speaking to the wide range of audience. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is Swiss pricing, because I was talking about what it looks like when you have, in this section, I'm going to kind of keep this one a little fast and loose. This section is a reference to what the pricing looks like under these no tip, high wage options, connects a few other little things that we've talked about over the thing. I'm actually going to put timestamps on this video, so whatever, you can skip this if you want, but so Swiss pricing, right? And, I'm not against the high minimum wage. Labor is a huge component in restaurants, but not all industries. I'm not the cost of living will go up guy, right? Like, the cost of living has been going up, wages have been stagnant. But when I say Swiss pricing, right, we're talking about Switzerland. Wonderful, beautiful, pristine country with alpine scenery, amazing wines, bankers of dubious moral and personal the chocolate, there's the chocolate, a hamburger and fries in this country can be like $35 USD, like easily in a sit-down restaurant. And this isn't just because of the strong international currency, like the exchange rate between the USD and the franc. The franc? I think it's the franc, yeah. But it's also because base wages in Switzerland are really high. And I'm sure there's a bunch of people chomping at the bit, right? Yeah, it's a very different economy. It's a very different population. But one of the other key differences is that the economic disparity, like the income gap, is like half of that as the U.S., right? So, we need to be serious about doing something with like maybe holding large chains accountable to change this and create tax incentives for small business owners, which, of course, I mean, I work with small to medium restaurants for the most part, right? But I mean, when you have small to medium businesses that are going to get rolled, like Paul's Diner down the street is not going to survive a $20 wage, right? I mean, I don't really know. I don't really know an argument to get around or through that, right? Like, and even if you tier the legislation to say like, oh, if you have 5 employees or fewer, the wage is capped at 15 or something. Cool, but what that means is that your competition for better wages is going to be through the roof because any organization that's a little bit larger that can afford to pay it will, which means that you don't get the best quality candidates. You probably deal with higher turnover. You probably deal with a whole bunch of other issues, right? Whatever. It just doesn't seem like it's going to work, right? So maybe similar thing, proposing a little taxes and wage rates for franchises and chains and operating licenses should be done. You know, call me that weirdo. And I don't want to attack these guys either. Like I've mentioned this before, a local franchise like the Arches, a local guy can own an Arch store and he can be a great part of the community. He can promote from within. They can do anything that they want to be a local restaurant. And I agree with that wholly, right? I know it's like a tricky argument because, it's the big brand and all that stuff. But I really do believe that individual owners can be involved in their store every day, involved with their employees, involved with their community. And that makes them a local business, even though they've got the name tag on. I don't call local businesses these douchebags with 20 stores across 3 states, slinging these licensed franchised products and complaining about how like they're the ones getting stepped on by like these wage increases. Like, dude, if you have 20 stores, maybe you shouldn't have opened 20. I don't know. Maybe, sorry if you feel singled out by this, but if you have even 1 to 5 stores and you're in them and involved in them and everything, but when you have 20, that's like a fleet of ships. You're not captaining each ship. You're not a local business at that point. You're in multiple locals. Like I don't know. Mom and pops in this conversation too. Like like I said, we're kind of bouncing here. Like Paul's Diner down the street needs to get more serious in the way that they run and organize their business. And it's probably going to sound pretty biased because I sell organizational tools. I sell education and services to do these kinds of things. But that 3 to 5% profit margin happens for a lot of different reasons. It happens because, small locations don't have purchasing power, so they pay higher costs of goods and some things like that, right? But additionally, right, some of these small businesses don't have the tools, training, or education, or they're too busy to have enough hands and enough time of their own to do things the way they should be done. I've worked with restaurant partners that have not costed their menu items. They just look at their money in and their money out, and it's a small family business, and they're like, okay, we're making money. Okay, we're losing money. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When you don't have training and enforcement, you don't have real financial controls. You can't plop on whatever portion of Euro meat onto something and say, well, we're making money this week, and then plopping on different portions next week and say, well, we're losing money the next, and actually attribute it to anything going on in the business. It's a CF. And, they basically like look at the money and pray. And I know that to a lot of people listening to this that sounds dumb, but these guys, these folks are all people. They all have businesses, they all have lives, they all have families, and it's not like they're entirely stupid people, right? Like they're trying to learn. It's not easy. Sometimes you don't have all the tools or answers. Sometimes, people like open to these things and it grew faster than they were able to accommodate, and good for them. But, now it's grown to a point where they're losing money instead of making money like they did in the old days. The world changes quickly. I don't think anyone should lose everything by default because they were imperfect going into this situation. I've talked about this before too. Like people from different backgrounds, of all kinds of different backgrounds. People with doctorates and run breweries and restaurants in Chicago. That's great. Some of them don't always make the best business decisions. They learn in business when they run the business. That happens, right? Uh, these things impact these small businesses without structure, without uh, fully dedicated paid positions like a chief financial officer who can review budgets constantly all the time to control the profitability. And I like these are the local businesses everyone wants to support. You're probably doing your part by shopping locally. Like these guys need to get on the ball and start supporting themselves, like, and making money reasonably off of what you're giving them, right? I think that's a huge problem that goes undiagnosed and untalked about because it feels unfair. I mean, these guys are getting shafted in a lot of ways, but somebody's got to be the adult and tell them, like, hey, you know what, you need to run your business better because whatever, we can talk about equalizing the tax credits or doing this or taxing certain types of corporations more, but at the end of the day, when they're not running their businesses well, that's why they're closing, despite community support, and that needs to stop, right? I mean, I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to give you the no obfuscation view here. And so tying this off, right, like I just want to address like the social pressure thing and a few other things and kind of closing this out. Like the reason this was put into the manuscript for like how to be your server's favorite in a couple of different ways and with a little bit additional stuff that I'll go over at a different time, but man, I get so tired of seeing stuff on social media, like some bullshit short form video or some front page or Reddit thing going on about server crashes out over no tip and whatever. Hospitality at its core is a service of humility. Servers should be fired or disciplined severely for something like this, like, chasing people out of the restaurants and confronting them about how much money, is left on a bill. And frankly, over 14 years, I only have a handful of times that I can even corroborate that this happens in real life with no cameras rolling for people that have thousands of followers. And I'm going to be honest with you too, like, right, if somebody stiffs a server on a check, no one really cares, right? And I mean, if it's a big check, like, if somebody spends $1,000 and there's all kinds of like complications about like tipping out and how this stuff works within the restaurant, somebody stiffs a server on $1,000 check, the restaurant should take care of it in some capacity. And I mean, I've done it myself, right? I've taken care of my servers who have been screwed over by people who were okay to spend $1,000, $1,200 or something, but didn't feel that their server merited anything. And I knowing the situation personally, I don't think it's that they offered bad service. The people were there for plenty of time, had plenty of chances to talk to me as the manager. That didn't occur, right? And that can happen from time to time. The business should be able to afford to take care of it from time to time. I highly encourage that. And same thing, right? That's another outlier. I don't think that we're talking about this occurring very frequently. Servers should not be presuming what someone's financial situation is. When we say an act of humility, an act of hospitality, we're saying that like you give this service because they're coming in and soliciting comfort and food and service from you, and that's what you do, right? It should be at its core very empathetic. And frankly, career servers already know it's not personal and they don't care if it is. We see a lot of faces. The general tipping expectation for service staff, experienced service staff, is 15 to 20%. Despite whatever the handhelds tell you, whatever the clickbait article tells you, I don't really know people in my line of work, especially not at my age, that want the moon in their retirement fund from every single customer. And this whole harangue on Gen Z that I see all the time on these posts where they were side-eyeing me pouring my cappuccino because I hit no tip. It's like, sounds more like a personal thing, man. Like, if they're inexperienced in the workplace, maybe they probably have some weird expectation where they're like, yeah, I should get 30% on every coffee or, whatever, every croissant or something. But they're also kids. Who cares? They're doing their jobs, and it's up to the community to educate them and adjust their expectations and kind of show them what's normal and possible in these roles, right? Stop haranguing on Gen Z like this. It doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, don't go whine on Reddit or like something like that or explode in the restaurant. Take a few minutes out of your day. Send an email. If you're dining in, ask for the manager and let them know, like, hey, I think your tipping expectation on your screen is unreasonable and you should change it. It reflects poorly on you. That's all you have to say. Like, I don't think it should be awkward to communicate this. This is how things get changed. I don't think you need to be blowing up in anyone's face or anything. I mean, and also recommending that to peers and recommending that people participate in communicating, fairly. And if somebody is a dick back to you and they're like, "Oh, well, why don't you want to pay our staff?" It's like, well, because that's supposed to be your job. I don't work here. I don't own the place, right? Like, if they're a dick to you, fine, be one back, right? But I don't understand why everybody has to do all these outrageous posts and get all this traction and clickbait and rage fest for this topic that should be pretty simple to talk about between adults, right? I mean, you're one of those ardent no tip people, and you're like, oh, the workers should rise up and demand change. Cool. More power to you. You're not going to listen to me or the things that I see as someone who works in the financial side and profitability side of restaurants. You benefit from the social construct of American service with the tipping expectation without paying any of the price. I don't have anything else to say to you other than this, right? Like, putting the highest pressure on the lowest denominator in the power dynamic doesn't fix this. You stiffing a server and being like, well, rise up and revolt and fight for your rights, like, doesn't start the labor revolution. It just rewards the business by giving them their money, and it perpetuates the system. More power to you. If you're actively involved in your Chamber of Commerce and organizing workers' rights stuff, cool. You have probably a little bit more leeway there, but like I said, you're putting the highest pressure on the people with the least power. And so, last one before we go straight to the outro, I want to talk about a couple of these fast food CEOs crying pretty prominently. I think probably over the last year and a half, 2 years, like, to the newspapers, like, I wish I could have customers subsidize my labor costs. It's not fair. Yeah, I'm sure you fucking do. Yeah, just keep siphoning all the money up from the bottom and passing it up the food chain. That's, I'm sure, sustainable, and that'll work and everything. Like, I get, fine. The whole tipping conversation is about customer subsidizing labor and what that costs and what that looks like. But don't, guys, come on. Yes, you do want customers to subsidize your labor costs. That would be great for you. You're not doing anything to change that. You're not paying people. You, in fact, want to pay people less and have customers pay more for the same or less goods or services. It's such a, false rallying cry, and people jump on it every time. So-and-so CEO says tipping is unfair, and everybody in the comment section is like, yeah, do away with tipping. And it's like, why are you agreeing with this guy? This guy's going to charge you double for your hamburger with, whatever. He's going to charge you double for the hamburger, underpay the worker, and then ask that you pay it. They would totally do that in a heartbeat. So yeah, with that off the board, at the end of all this, I want to thank you for your time. This series, like I said, is inherently more customer facing, but I think it really helps operators kind of remove themselves from their internal logic and kind of see the way this space interacts. I'm just genuinely trying to talk with people. I think things happen when you talk with each other and not past each other. I recognize a lot of these debates. I fully agree with a lot of different perspectives, both as an operator and a customer, right? On these topics. I mean, I really do have mixed but strong feelings about this. And at the end of this, this is a little kind of series I'm starting between the shorts and the long form videos. Coming up by next Monday at the latest is going to be my Depression and Prohibition era menu design and analysis and how it relates to kind of current and changing consumer demands. Very excited, lots of research going on, and just a little something for you guys to kill the time with in between. So, thanks.